All right. Are we filming this on the day of? With me with a headache, sort of waking up from a nap? Yes. All those things are true. Oh. Hold, please. I was wondering why the lights flickered. Never accuse me. Never let it be said that I only showed the most edited and curated videos. Here we are, chapter 3. One of these days, I'm actually going to do what I keep saying I'm going to do. And I am going to pre-record a bunch of these. So I'm not recording it the day of, posting it some random part during the day. All right. Chapter 3, Friday, December 7th. December 7th, 2008. Emailed Dad. I went digging through his files and found a photocopy of a drawing. It's a sketch of 5 women standing in front of a barn. The back was labeled Aslan O'Crane in Dad's handwriting. I asked Mom about it, and she just got mad at me for going through Dad's stuff. I told her it was for school. She told me to pick someone from her family. She said I didn't need to learn about some black sheep in Dad's family. The thing is, one lady in the drawing looks a lot like me. Same eyes, same chin. She even does her hair in one long braid like I do. I picked her, of course. Since Dad's deployed, he'll take at least a week to respond. This was not, by any means, the first deployment Nikki had dealt with. Rand, Nikki's dad, had spent a few months here and a few months there, on various trainings and missions throughout her entire life. He'd served for a year in Bosnia in 1997. Only 3 years ago, he'd gone to Korea for a year. So this year-long deployment was not a new experience for the Rodriguez family, but Nikki knew it felt different. She understood what war meant this time. Of course, she really needn't have worried. By now, Nikki should have at least suspected her dad had more protection than the simple Kevlar and ceramic-plated body armor his fellow soldiers wore. Yet she had not made the connection. I'm sure you have. Miss Rodriguez, put it away, please, Mr. Miranda said. Sorry, sir, Nikki said, shoving her journal in her bag. For the last 15 minutes of class, Mr. Miranda continued, I want you to get into your groups and trade names. He picked up a pile of papers and started passing them out as students moved into their groups. Use these worksheets as a guide while doing your research on each other's families. Come prepared with research on Monday. For today, share whatever you do know about your family name with your group members. Mr. Miranda waved today's book, The Anatomy of Peace in the Air, a gesture the class knew meant get to work. Well, Nellie said, handing her name to Emma. You've heard my story. Emma looked at the name in her hand, Jess Pedersen. Oh, you picked her. Yay. Sorry. My nose is not cooperating today. And my throat is very dry. And I think the kids have picked something up, and I think we're all getting whatever it is. I sense fun in our future. Here, Nikki said, handing her name to Nellie. Who is Aslan O'Crane? Nellie asked, sounding the name out slowly. I don't know, Nikki admitted. I found this, she added, digging through her bag and pulling out the photocopy. I think this one might be her. Nikki handed the paper to Nellie and pointed out the woman. Holy cow, Emma said, peeking over Nellie's shoulder. You're almost identical. She even does her hair the same, Nellie said, glancing at Nikki's braid, which hung over her shoulder. I know, Nikki said, pushing her braid to her back. That's kind of why I picked her. I don't really know anything about her, Nikki shrugged. I mean, other than she was apparently a black sheep in my dad's family. That's according to my mom, so grain of salt and all that. Fair enough, Nellie said, but still, a black sheep is something interesting, right? She flipped the photocopy and saw Aslan O'Crane's name scrawled on the back. Hey, did you see this? What? Nikki leaned closer. Look, under her name, Nellie pointed out. Oh, I missed that, Nikki said, taking the paper from Nellie's hand. In small print, almost obscured by the tail of the G in Aslan's name, was written 4 numbers and 2 letters, 1692 M.A. Any idea what that means? Nellie asked. Perhaps the year? Emma suggested. Nikki shrugged. Probably. I guess I'll find out since I'm the one doing the research, Nellie said. At least I've got a starting point. Emma nodded, saying, Right, here's mine. She handed a paper to Nikki. Madam Ethel Ortega. That's my grandmother, Emma said before Nikki could ask. When did she die? Nellie asked. Oh, she's alive, Emma said. She lives here in Otter Sands. I thought she'd be fun to use for the project. She used to work for the circus and tell people's fortunes. She sounds way cool, Nikki said. Would you like to meet her? Emma asked. We can go over to her house after school today. Nikki and Nellie briefly glanced at each other and then both said, Sure. Oh, Nikki groaned, shoulders falling as she slapped her hand to her face. My mom has her knitting circle today. Excuse me. Does she go to the one at the Purling Kitten on Main? Emma asked. I think so, Nikki said. My aunt goes to the same one, Emma said brightly. What does knitting have to do with meeting Emma's grandma? Nellie's brow furrowed. Well, it means I have to wait for my brother after school, and the middle school gets out like half an hour after us. Do you guys mind waiting? Gotcha, Nellie said. Well, that's fine. I can wait. Me too. We'll meet you out front, Emma said. Sorry, y'all. I never claimed that this was a professional production, okay? You're getting what you get. You get what you pay for. It's YouTube. It's free. All right. December 7th, 2008. It's been 2 days. Still haven't surfed. My whole body feels tight. Surfing has always been the plan. I'm not sure who I am if I don't surf. Sitting outside on the stairs leading up to the school, Nellie shoved her journal in her bag. She gritted her teeth, trying to breathe through the growing knot in her stomach. If she could just loosen it a little, she might be able to figure out this thing, or maybe figuring this out was how she loosened it. Before she could stew any more on this conundrum, Emma walked up. Hey, Emma said, sitting next to Nellie. Are you okay? Fine, Nellie lied, just hungry. Oh, well, my grandma has a tendency to feed people whether they're hungry or not, so you're in luck. Emma grinned. Nellie cracked a smile. So, what's your grandma like? Think Golden Girls meets Esmeralda from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Emma said. She sounds awesome. Nellie thought of the only grandparent she had ever known, her late paternal grandmother, a frumpy old woman who lived in a house that perpetually smelled of foot cream and old cabbage. She is, but I should probably warn you, can we please just go home? Said the voice of a 10-year-old boy. Nellie and Emma stood up and saw Nikki coming around the corner with her younger brother who carried a giant black case. Over here. Oh, over here, Emma called to Nikki. She waved and ran down the steps. Right, Nikki said, steering Cam over to the stairs. Emma, Nellie, this is my brother Cameron. Cam, this is Emma and Nellie. Nellie gave a small wave from the top of the stairs, but Emma, who was at the bottom of the stairs, stuck out her hand and shook Cam's. As his small hand clasped hers, Emma was flooded with cold. Cam was running, screaming. Suddenly, he was floating in the air like a balloon. Something held his feet. No, was tied to his feet. Ouch! Cam squeaked. Oh! Emma blinked rapidly, jerking her hand back. Sorry, she added, as her eyesight finally cleared. Sometimes I don't know my own strength. Are you all right? Cam nodded, rubbing his hand. Emma's brain raced with what she had seen. What had been a mere desire to get her to her grandmother's house swelled uncomfortably into urgency. I usually walk to my grandma's, but, well, if you guys don't mind riding in the back with some boards, I can drive, Nellie said as she came down the steps. That works, Nicky said, eyeing Cam, who had set his case down. Give me a minute to stick his stuff in my car, and we'll be right back. Nicky picked Cam's case up and led him toward the car. Are you okay? She whispered. What? Cam asked. Your hand, Nicky said, gesturing with her free hand. Oh, yeah, Cam said, that's fine, but do we have to go wherever we're going? Emma's grandma's house, and yes, it's her group project, Nicky said as she unlocked the trunk. But I want to go home. I'm hungry. Cam helped heave his trombone case into the trunk. He took off his backpack and threw it in after. If Emma's grandma doesn't feed you, we can grab food on the way home, Nicky said, closing the trunk. What if I want a whole pack of cookies? Cam put his hands on his hips. Completely mine. Nicky grinned. Absolutely. Fine. Cam stuck his hand out to seal the deal. Double stuff. Nicky laughed as she shook his hand and tousled his hair. Come on, they're waiting for us. As they all loaded into Nellie's truck, Cam watching Emma climb into the truck bed, Nicky walked over to the driver's side where Nellie was sitting, putting on her sunglasses. Hey, can Cam ride in here with you? My mom wouldn't care too much if I fall out the back of the truck. Out of a truck. Hold on, I'm reading too fast. Hey, can Cam ride in here with you? My mom won't care too much if I fall out of the back of a truck. Out the back of a truck. Who wrote this? But she'd kill me if anything happened to Cam. Nicky glanced at her brother. Totally, Nellie said. My dad is the same way with me and my sister. She cleared off the seat. Hey, bud, Nicky said before Cam could get into the truck bed. You're up front with Nellie. Nicky, Cam said, emphasizing the second syllable of her name. I'm big enough to ride in the back. Mom would kill me, Nicky said, raising her eyebrows. Mom doesn't have to know, Cam said, mirroring her tone and brows. Cookies, Nicky said, leaning towards him. Cam rolled his eyes and headed to the passenger side door. After he had buckled his seatbelt, Cam glanced at Nellie, who was waiting for Nicky and Emma to get settled before backing out of her parking spot. So, Nellie said, watching Nicky give a thumbs up. How old are you? 10, Cam said, but I'll be 11 in July, he added. Nellie cracked the little window that opened to the back. Emma, she called, where am I going? Do you know where Crescent Street is? Emma asked. Yeah, Nellie said. 1377 Crescent, Emma said. Nellie nodded, closed the window, and backed up. This is kind of a small truck. No offense, Cam said as they drove off. Nellie laughed. None taken. She said, my dad said if I was dragging more than teenagers and surfboards around, I'd need a bigger rig. But as it is, Nellie shrugged. So you're kind of young to be in middle school. No offense, she added with a smile. I'm kind of super smart. Cam shrugged this time and added, but Nicky says I'm not supposed to say that a lot. Well, Mr. Genius, want to pick the radio station? Nellie gestured to the radio. She flicked her blinker. Sure, Cam said, lighting up as he started twisting the tuning knob. Nellie smiled. There was something about this kid that reminded her of herself at that age. She grinned as she listened to him find an oldies station and sing along to a Beatles song. After a few Beach Boys and Bon Jovi songs, Nellie pulled up to 1377 Crescent Street. I should warn you, Emma said as they all piled out. Grandma never really left her circus days behind her. Circus? Cam asked. Just then, a very short, older woman came out of the house. She had a long gray braid tucked up and around her head. Her green eyes flashed out from her olive skin, which was weathered and soft. A cascade of silvery bangles danced and jingled on her naked wrists. She wore a white billowy top with sleeves that flowed to her elbows. The bottom of her blouse was tucked into the top of a maroon, almost brown skirt, which whirled around her ankles, blown by a wind that wasn't there. Madame Ortega was simultaneously homey and otherworldly. "Emma," Ethel said, kissing both of Emma's cheeks. "These must be your friends." She hugged Nellie and then Nicky. Upon seeing Cam, Ethel's eyes darkened and her smile faltered. "You did not tell me you were bringing the boy." Cam's eyes widened and flicked to Nicky. Ethel touched his shoulders gently with the tips of her middle fingers. She pulled her hands back, touching her fingertips to her thumbs. "Turn," she told him. Cam slowly turned around. When he faced her again, Ethel nodded and said, "Welcome to my home, Cameron." 7 December 2008. Grandma fed us. No surprise there. Now she's getting her materials and a large pillar candle, which suggests she's doing readings today. That would be a surprise, but also a good way to offer guidance about the girls' challenges without seeming to know too much. There are many laws of magic, but the ones that are there tend to be important. At least that's what Grandma and Rochelle keep telling me. Closing her journal, Emma glanced around the living room. Nellie had disappeared into the bathroom, leaving the other three to lounge on various couches. The three sat happily digesting their meal of chicken and salad sandwiches on croissants, complete with a variety of vegetables cut into sticks, perfect for dipping in the salad dressing of their choice. Ethel was an avid dressing maker. The room itself was warm and eclectic. Light came through the many windows. Though the windows were not the only source of light. A variety of lamps were scattered around the room, some with stained glass lampshades and others with cloth, some even looked homemade. The walls were covered with pictures of differing shapes and sizes. I need glasses. Some of the pictures were black and white and clearly older photographs. A few featured a younger Ethel with a man, and then the two with a baby girl, baby Rochelle, and then the two with young girls. At a certain point, the man no longer appeared in the photos, but the young girls, Rochelle and Amy, Emma's mother, grew into women. Young Emma appeared in the pictures, and then quite suddenly, Amy disappeared, leaving behind Ethel, Rochelle, and Emma. The bits of wall not covered in the family's history were painted clary sage. A large dark cabinet took over most of the back wall. It was from this cabinet Ethel removed a variety of decanters and set them on the table in the dining room. Cam watched as Ethel made several trips. She had already turned down all offers of help. He peeked over the couch into the dining room, watching as Ethel now set her collection of jars on the table in front of the decanters. "What's she doing?" Cam whispered to Nicky. Nicky shrugged and glanced at Emma, who sat on the love seat between the couches. "I suspect we'll find out soon," Emma whispered to Cam. Just as Nellie came out of the bathroom, Ethel came into the living room. "If you would all join me around the table, please," Ethel said with her hands clasped at her chest. Emma dear, will you grab the teacups?" Emma nodded and went into the kitchen as the others followed Ethel into the dining room. This room was much smaller than the living room and could only be described as bright and a bit beachy. Sawn oak floors like the rest of the house, cream-colored walls and two windows, the largest of which was framed by sky-blue curtains. Natural light filled the space, reflecting and sparkling off of all the jars and decanters on the long walnut table. If that table could tell stories, well, I suppose you wouldn't need me. This table would become the center of many adventures, and on this, their first adventure, it kept its most interesting secret covered with a wide jute table runner. On one side of the table sat Nicky and Cam, their backs to the kitchen. Nellie sat across from them. Ethel sat at the end of the table closest to the door. Are you going to read our tea leaves or something? Nellie asked Ethel, as Emma set down a tray of teacups on the table and took a seat next to Cam. Oh, no, dear, Ethel said. I don't waste time with such parlor tricks. Nellie gestured to the teacups. But this is a reading, Ethel explained, which of course meant nothing to anyone who actually needed an explanation. Why don't we start with you, dear? She said, gesturing to Nikki. Me? Oh, sure. Nikki stood. What do I do? Take a cup and choose a liquid from any of the decanters, and then add however much of whichever ingredient from the jars you like, Ethel said, moving the large pale pillar candle closer to her. Just whatever, Nikki said as she grabbed one of the teacups. Whatever feels like it speaks to you. Nikki nodded, feeling this spoke crazy to her, but reaching for a long, sleek decanter all the same. She poured its white liquid into her cup. The sharp tang met her nose. Nikki was sure it was buttermilk, but didn't want to ask. Instead, she moved on to choosing ingredients. There were dozens of jars, varying in sizes from baby food size to quart-sized. Each was filled with something different. Salt, pepper, sand, various dried herbs, various fresh ones, bits of petals, raw sugar, and many things Nikki couldn't identify. I could tell you everything, but really it would sound less like a story and more like a shopping list. Rest assured, I'll let you know what you need to know, but for now, let your imagination run wild. Glancing into her teacup of probably buttermilk, Nikki closed her eyes for a second and tried to feel the jars speak to her, as Ethel had said. She pinched some raw sugar and sprinkled it in. Then, as if the jars suddenly became backlit, Nikki knew exactly which jars to use. Now, even though Nikki couldn't identify everything she put in the cup, I will tell you her specific ingredients because I know you're curious. Fresh thyme, fir needles, and daisy petals, dried fern, a tuft of dandelion, and a small sprig of rosemary. The concoction looked, well, frankly like something a child would create in the backyard and hand to his mother as tea, which she would have praised him for and then dumped into the grass when his back was turned. Are you finished? Ethel asked. I think so. Very well, I'll take that, Ethel said, standing and reaching out for Nikki's cup, which Nikki willingly gave. Bring your chair here, dear, Ethel said, gesturing in front of her as she sat. As Nikki moved the chair carefully, almost sitting knee to knee with Ethel, perpendicular to the table, Ethel held the teacup in her hands, one palm under the other cup, while the other covered the top. She closed her fingers over the cup and muttered something no one could understand. It seemed to satisfy her because Ethel set the cup down on the table. We're going to let that meld for a moment. Have you ever had your palms read? Nikki shook her head. Your hand, Ethel said, extending her own palm upward toward Nikki, who put her hand palm up in Ethel's hand. The old woman traced the lines on Nikki's palm. You are of great power, she continued, as she looked at Nikki's hand. Your heart is pure and understanding. You must learn more about who you are and your connection with the earth. You must understand your destiny. Ethel released Nikki's hand. Destiny? Nikki said, studying her palm, hoping to see whatever it was that Ethel saw. Yes, Ethel said. Your heart is of the earth. You must connect to it if you wish to harness your potential. She turned her attention back to the cup, which she picked up and held. Oh my gosh, how many more pages? Who wrote this? It's so long. She picked up and held between both hands as she rested her arms on her legs. How did that happen? Nikki asked as she saw the inside of the cup, for the contents had changed significantly from the white and muddled mess to an almost translucent emerald green. The teacup seemed to contain its own current, glittery shapes formed on the surface in various shades of green, some brighter, some much darker than the base liquid. Magic, Ethel said with a sparkle in her eye. Nikki was unable to tell if Ethel was joking. She wasn't. Watch. Ethel nodded down to the cup. As the images unfolded in front of the two, Ethel spoke quietly. You have divine power in you. The image shifted. You are adding imagination to a relationship. You are gentle and unhurried. You are cautious, but peaceful and content. Between Ethel's translations of the shape and their constant shifting, Nikki found it difficult to follow along, let alone think of questions to ask. The image shifted again, this time into something any of us would easily recognize, a series of small stars. You are about to embark on an adventure, Ethel continued. The stars imply growth and imagination. They represent time itself. The stars morphed into 3 lines and then 4 before combining into one spiral. Earth and the water, Ethel mumbled, almost to herself. To Nikki, she said quite clearly, your ambitions are to join the 3 parts of mind and 4 elements. You seek growth. Nikki nodded, wishing she could take notes as the images swirled again. You have achieved purification in your desires. You've already tuned your will, Ethel said before the shapes changed again. You have much strength. You bring balance to opposites. This is important, very important. Once again, an image you or I could actually recognize as a real shape rather than a blob appeared. A sword. You dream of finding your true path. You are up for a challenge, ready to prove you can overcome any obstacle, Ethel explained. The images began shifting between shapes faster. Ethel rattled off meanings, almost desperate to keep up. Your perception of self is encouraging. You have strength and power. Shift. You desire cosmic consciousness. You want control over yourself and your environment. Shift. You seek a new earth, new mind and body. Shift. You seek balance. The teacup made one last shape. The moon. A warning, Ethel said solemnly. You need to see that you will grow gradually, not all at once. You have both a wild and tame nature to your abilities. This is of the utmost importance. Do not dwell on your losses. Do not linger on your mistakes. Learn to move ahead, Ethel said. You risk losing even more if you cannot learn to move forward. The surface of the magical tea shuddered and was still. The green faded until the liquid looked like nothing more interesting than water. No evidence of the ingredients remained. Once again, Nikki found herself asking, how did that... Would you be a dear and put your cup in the sink? Ethel said, handing her the teacup. I'm afraid the how is rather long and complicated just now. Sure, Nikki said. She stood and moved into the kitchen. Had she had her wits about her, she might have pressed Ethel, but as it was, between the clear and obvious magic that had just taken place and the massive amount of mystifying information dumped into her brain, Nikki was overwhelmed. The odd thing, at least for Nikki, was despite the overwhelm, she also felt genuinely grateful. One day she would understand these answers, though she did not right now. Emma, Ethel said. Emma sat up straighter. Yes? You're next. But I make an old woman happy, Ethel insisted. Emma picked up a teacup and stood. She glanced at her grandmother once before beginning to create her concoction. Emma moved more quickly than Nikki had, now sitting at the table once again. From a short decanter, she poured a light yellow liquid, Rochelle's homemade dandelion oil, into her teacup, following it with just a splash of olive oil from a square decanter. Nikki shifted in her seat while Nellie, jaw clenched, kept her expression stony. The two sat, not knowing that they are opposite ends of the pendulum, one filled with wonder at the present, while the other slowly filled with fear of the future. Meanwhile, Cam sat completely fascinated by everything that was happening. He watched as Ethel lit the candle and moved her hands over the flame as though trying to catch the smoke. Her bottom hand moved toward her, palm facing her, while her top hand moved away, palm out, and then they switched places. She repeated this gesture several times. Emma had moved on to the jars and had just added her last ingredient, dried cactus. She handed the cup to Ethel before taking a seat. As Emma positioned herself in the chair knee to knee with her grandmother, Ethel performed the same bit of magic over the teacup she had with Nikki's palms and fingers encasing the cup. The concoction of oils, bits of flour, and herbs melded together. Ethel placed the cup on the table. Ethel took Emma by the hands. Her aged and withered hands clasped Emma's soft, ringless fingers. She looked into her granddaughter's eyes and smiled, nodding encouragingly. "Go ahead. Take the cup," she said, releasing Emma. Emma placed the cup in Ethel's hands, and the two watched as a now opaque golden liquid exposed its secrets on the surface. "There will be a binding of forces using powers to guard against repression. Yes, the union of opposite but complementary parts." Ethel glanced at the girls. Nikki and Nellie looked at each other, but Emma's eyes were locked on the cup. "Grandma," a new shape was forming. "What do you see?" Ethel asked. Cat?" Emma guessed. She had studied some of this, but not nearly enough to be sure of anything she saw. "A suggestion of clairvoyant powers," Ethel said. "What else?" "I'm not sure." The golden shapes were muddled. "The lion," Ethel said. "Divine power." Emma nodded. "And now?" "A mountain range, maybe?" "The 3 peaks, and they represent attainment on the 3 planes of consciousness," Ethel said slowly. Emma shook her head slightly as if she didn't believe what Ethel was telling her. As I'm sure you've gathered, Emma was quite familiar with her psychic medium powers, but this was news, even to her, for attaining all 3 planes was essentially unheard of. Most psychics attained 1 level, but almost no one attained all 3. Mounting pressure crept up Emma's spine. She took a steadying breath. The shapes shifted again. "You see the others in this relationship as being able to bring balance. For the ultimate goal is balance." Ethel studied the golden liquid. The shape morphed into something unmistakable, a skull and scythe. Emma nodded and said calmly, "Change. Of course, that's natural. Is there another meaning?" "Eternal life," Ethel said. The skull and scythe swirled into the shape of a goblet. "Fulfilled hopes and wishes, you are the awakening. To those who are ignorant, you bring fear. To those who understand, you bring freedom." Emma sat a bit taller. She took a deep breath and nodded as though accepting the calling. "I understand." "My dear," Ethel said, patting Emma's hand as the goblet swirled away, "you too receive a warning. A warning of ignorance. You and the others must turn to your inner power, your inner light. There is always hope, as there is always light." Oh, just kidding. I jumped a line. I was like, that's not the line. "There is hope, as there is always hope. Strength is found in creativity and inspiration. Seek to follow your inner light, and the way will show itself to you." Emma nodded as the liquid faded from its opaque gold to clear and water-like. Ethel set the cup on the table and the two hugged. "Thank you, Grandma," Emma whispered. When their embrace ended, Ethel held Emma's face between her hands. She didn't say anything. She simply raised her eyebrows, kissed Emma's forehead, and released her. Emma took her cup to the kitchen. Ethel began her cleansing ritual with the candle, briefly meeting Nellie's nervous eyes. Nellie nodded. "My dear," or Ethel nodded. "My dear." Nellie fidgeted in her seat. I'm, she sighed. "Okay." She shook her head slightly as she moved, holding her cup. She, too, moved quickly. Nellie found a decanter filled with what appeared to be, and what was in fact, water. She quickly sprinkled in some chunky sea salt, a bit of nori, fresh thyme, dried magnolia, and hyacinth petals. Without looking at the old woman, Nellie handed Ethel the cup and took her seat. After Ethel had performed her bit of muttering magic and set Nellie's now churning mixture on the table, Ethel put her hand out to Nellie. "Your hand, dear?" Nellie chewed on her cheek but gave Ethel her hand. Examining the lines on Nellie's hand, Ethel said, "Your heart is of water." "I'm a surfer," Nellie said. "Yes," Ethel said. "Your power comes from water. You are connected, but not enough for what is to come." Ethel ran her index finger down the center of Nellie's palm. "You will need to access your greater power. You are ignorant." "Ignorant? What power?" Nellie pulled her hand away from Ethel as if she had burned it. Ethel looked at Emma. "They don't know." It wasn't a question. Emma shook her head, adding, "Not yet." Satisfied with this answer, Ethel took Nellie's cup and held it so they could both watch the now shimmering dark blue, translucent liquid. As the shapes began forming, their colors changed from dark green to purple to black. Ethel spoke. "Your past is hidden in shadow, yet all will be revealed soon." Nellie nodded, but the color of the unidentifiable shapes was eerily familiar. Her palms sweat. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Nellie's stomach felt like someone was tap dancing all over it. "You are surrounded by unconditional love," Ethel continued. "Be mindful of this love, for it is through love our greatest powers are often made accessible." Nellie's shapes moved much slower than either Emma's or Nikki's. "Your happiness will be fulfilled. You will find achievement, love, and compassion." "Sounds pretty good," Nellie said, breathing easier. "An upside-down triangle is the ancient symbol for water," Ethel said, pointing into the cup. "Water was the first mirror. The reflection in water is almost always upside down, so you must look beneath the surface, beyond appearance, to find deeper truth." Nellie grunted, unsure of exactly how to respond. The shapes shifted again. "Power is offered, but it must be nurtured." "Power?" Nellie didn't. Ethel didn't address Nellie's questions, for the image had swirled. "Ships," she said. "A safe voyage, a sign of stubborn, subconscious reflection." Ethel looked at Nellie as though willing her to understand the gravity of this reading. "You have great power at your fingertips," Ethel said. "It has followed you your entire life. Though once dormant, it is available to you now, but you must reach for it. Look inside yourself." I don't know what I know, dear," Ethel said softly. "Look." She gestured to the cup. "A rook, like in chess?" Nellie recognized this shape. Tom, her dad, was a big chess player. Ethel smiled. "The tower," she said. "It represents an awakening." "Do you fear knowledge?" I don't think so." Nellie's palms were beginning to sweat again. "Be open to your awakening," Ethel said gently. The tower disappeared in a swirl. "All secrets are available to you if you know how to fish for them." "This here," she said, pointing into the cup at a little squiggle, "represents meditation and reflection. Seek your answers with the knowledge that they will come if you are patient." Slowly, the squiggle and accompanying shapes morphed into a single black star. Ethel smiled. "Good fortune." Ethel believed the reading to be over, but the concoction in the cup had one last message. "What's happening?" Nellie asked. The teacup had started to vibrate. I don't. Ethel couldn't finish her sentence. Her breath caught in her chest. The images at the top of Nellie's cup seemed to be fighting. Black and green figures swirled. It would stop for a moment on the black star and then shift madly to an acid green face with horns coming from its head. Even Nellie knew this was not a good omen. "What's happening?" she asked again. The cup shook violently and crashed onto the floor. The liquid sizzled for a moment. The acid green face shone brightly and then swirled. The black star shimmered for barely a second before the liquid became nothing more than water. Ethel swallowed. A final warning. The image of the devil. "What's it mean?" Nikki asked. Nellie stared at the floor, the remnants of the ceramic and water swimming in her vision. "It represents a failure to use discrimination," Ethel said in a low voice. Her eyes were also glued to the water on the floor. "It is what happens when we do not seek the truth beneath the surface. It is ignorance, lack of light, black magic." Ethel looked at Nellie. "If you choose to accept your power, to seek the truth beneath appearances, your outcomes will be a celebration. However, if you do not accept your power, if you accept appearances, if you choose to remain ignorance, your outcome will be a dark one indeed. Nellie stuttered. Her stomach churned. If she opened her mouth again, she was sure more than simple words would come out. She gulped, pinching her lips together and shaking her head. I'll be into the truck, she managed to mumble before she disappeared out the front door. Emma, be a dear and get something to mop this up, Ethel said, leaning over to pick up the shattered teacup. Of course, Emma said, disappearing into the kitchen. Here, Cam said. He quickly took the now empty tray and brought it over to Ethel. Clever boy, Ethel said, carefully setting bits of broken ceramic on the tray. Thank you, dear. Be careful not to cut yourself, she added as Cam helped pick up the larger pieces. Here, Emma said. She handed Ethel a paper bag and a handful of paper towels. When the mess was cleaned up, the four sat back down. Cameron, may I read your palm? Ethel said. Cam said, sure. After he'd sat across from Ethel, he put his hand out. His mouth sat in a determined dash across his face. Ethel gently took his hand and studied the lines. My dear, you are destined for great things. You will make your father proud. She patted him on the hand. Cam looked at Nicky and Emma and relaxed into a smile. A shadow passed over Ethel's heart. Though the smile did not leave her eyes, she saw a darkness coming for the boy. She thought she understood it and believed by hiding it from him she might spare him from it, for she had frequently seen darkness come to those who sought to avoid it. But even the great Madame Ethel Ortega could not see all. Perhaps if she had, she might have chosen to warn him after all. It was a quiet ride back to the school. Nellie and Cam sat in the silent cab, while Nicky rode alone in the back. Emma had stayed at her grandmother's house. Though separate, the girls were subconsciously united, for each mulled over the masses of information she had received. When the three finally arrived back at the school, Cam shot off toward the Suzuki, now the only other car in the parking lot. Nicky went over to the driver's side of the truck where Nellie still sat. Thanks for the ride, Nicky said a bit lamely. Nellie nodded. So, Nicky said, should we trade phone numbers? I mean, we'll probably need to get in contact outside of school eventually. Sure, Nellie said. Nicky pulled out her phone and punched in. Nellie punched in the number as Nellie rattled it off. I got Emma's before we left. Do you want hers too? Nellie nodded as she dug through her bag. When she found her phone missing, she pulled out a Sharpie. Sighing, Nellie popped the cap off. Okay, shoot. Nicky gave her number and then Emma's, while Nellie wrote both on the inside of her palm, putting the name of each girl next to her number. I'll grab emails later. I found a typo. That's why I stopped reading. I was like, dang it. All right, that is the end of chapter 3. Hopefully you could hear me. I'm going to be devastated if this didn't work, and I guess we'll find out. If you're watching this and you're listening to me talk about this, then obviously it worked and it's fine. And if it didn't work, then I just wasted the last 42 minutes and 55 seconds of my life. Anyway, see you guys next week.